Today, I'm talking to Zach Zeldner of Compass Boulder, the #1 top producing Compass agent in all of Denver and Boulder, Colorado. Prior to Compass, Zach earned multiple top producer accolades at RE/MAX Alliance on Walnut, where his team was responsible for over $450 million in sales between 2012 and 2018. His group was repeatedly named the top team in the state and among the top 5 teams in the company's entire Mountain States region. Individually, Zach received multiple honors, including Hall of Fame and Lifetime Achievement designations. Despite his years of accomplishments and awards, talking to Zach, it's clear that he is successful based not on any unique approach other than delivering the best service and the best results to his clients with a focus on their needs. He shares how to keep it simple to stay on top. Thanks for listening to the Jerry Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. All right, everybody, it's the Jerry Metcalf podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we have in the Boulder, Denver markets of Compass, or Boulder, Denver markets, top agent in Compass in those markets, Zach Zeldner. Zach, thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, Jerry. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
Excited to hear how you've been so successful. Everybody, he's been in the business for 17 years. Launched Compass, I think it was a couple of years ago, year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And here we are today to learn about your business. So #1, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into real estate in the first place 17 years ago.
Sure. So, I grew up on the East Coast. I moved out to Boulder in 2000. I'd always really admired real estate. I've always had an interest in real estate. I like working with people. I like working with new challenges. And I got into real estate, got my license, and got started.
So East Coast, we're on the East Coast.
I grew up in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're kind of the enemy. You understand I'm from Georgia.
I know.
This, I guess you just never bothered to mention that before. Just kidding, everybody who might be taking this seriously. So Connecticut, grew up there.
Mm-hmm.
So you made your way to Colorado. You admired it, but what really brought you to Colorado and what held you in Colorado?
Yeah. I came out to Colorado after college. I was a soccer player growing up and throughout college, and then I played for a couple of teams after college as well, one here in Colorado, and that brought me here. And what kept me here is sort of a common story. You hear a lot of folks who move out to Boulder or to Aspen or to Telluride or to Denver for 6 months or a year, and 20 years later they're still here. So it's an amazing place. It's a beautiful town. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a very livable city, and it was very easy to stay.
Wow. So sounds like Stephen Shane's story, a little bit like Bill Fendel's story.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit about, so you got into Colorado. You weren't exactly a top agent when you arrived. You weren't exactly doing deals. What kind of, where was the income coming from, and
Sure.
go into real estate, and how did you get your first deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our market it's a competitive market, the brokerage market in Boulder. It's a small city, and it's a very competitive market. And I probably went into it fairly naive. But I got my license. I worked with a gentleman who'd been in the business for a long time and learned a lot from him. My first transaction, or probably 2 transactions, were friends of mine who I knew through playing soccer. And Boulder has a very robust startup scene, technology scene, a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. And they had both done very well and sold a business, and were both in the market and happened to hire me to help them find property. So, my first two transactions probably came too easily, to me. But they were both great friends and great people, and worked out really well. And so I was fortunate to get a couple of good clients, right away.
Did that make so because that was what, the first few months, the first year of being an agent?
Yeah, it was probably the first couple of months.
That's kind of an easy start.
It was, I was extremely fortunate, and I know it's not like that for everybody, and it's never really the case, but I was really lucky to get a couple great transactions right away.
So did you find that those two transactions give you the momentum for your career to take off, or did those two transactions maybe set expectations too high, or what did that look like to truly break into the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you know, momentum is a big thing in our business, momentum and confidence. And I think that really helped me, learn the business, learn the transaction process, and feel confident about moving forward and knowing that I could do it. So I think that it was really, quite fortunate to work with two great clients right away, and then build some strong momentum from that.
So you don't have any hardship story, like you are like sweating it, like how am I going to get my deal to happen? And you've had a good takeoff, or give us your biggest challenge.
Well, I think that most of us in real estate, we still sweat it every day, right? No matter what.
You were going to say that.
And,
yeah.
No matter how much we produce, no matter how many homes we sell, I think we wake up in the morning, or we look at January 1st hits, and here we go again. We're back at zero. So I think we all continue to sweat it and worry about where's that next transaction going to come from. Yeah.
So how does it look? A few things I always love to know about people's teams, but before we dig deep into that, how do you keep, obviously you've got those two sales, but what feeds your business? Is it networking? Is it advertising? Is there a certain way of winning business? Is it a focus on listings? Is it a focus on your team? What does that look like to keep the momentum and the trajectory of your business?
Yeah, sure. Every year I look back on my business. I look back at my previous year. And time again, I'm reminded that my business and my transactions come from referrals, and they come from referrals from within my network. My business is a relationship business. It's not based on running big advertisements. It's not based on getting huge exposure. It's based on doing really good work for my clients, and then from that work, it's getting referrals from clients and from past clients and from friends. So it's time and time again, it's based on referrals. And we all get caught up in the things that we think we need to do that are extra to build our business. But I'm always reminded that my business comes from referrals.
The client experience is what generates those referrals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. What was that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You said, you focus on doing really good work with clients. Mm-hmm. How would you define that? And I say that to help you answer that question. What are you really good at? What makes you competitive? What are you better at than the other brokers?
Sure. I think what makes really good work, I think the communication in our business is critical. And so really communicating clearly and timely and professionally with our clients is extremely important. And I think that going above and beyond the common expectation of a client, is good work. It's having some foresight to think 2 and 3 steps ahead instead of reacting to what that deadline or that date brings. It's looking down the road and being prepared for the next 3 and 4 deadlines down the road. What do I excel at? I think that I live in a very unique market. It's a small city. It's a very competitive market. A lot of our transactions are multiple transactions. And a lot of my business is off market. So really knowing the product, knowing the housing inventory, knowing what's coming up or what could be available, and then trying to put the puzzle together with the right buyer. So really just sourcing, knowing where to go for off-market deals and how to get your foot in the door.
So I think, because I know you're just going off of, and I can tell you're just thinking through, well, this is what makes me better. No dress rehearsal here, guys. But I noticed you said three things that are there were three key categories. One was, I wrote down, just not being reactive. I think a lot of us agents are very good at problem solving, which is you have to be a problem solver. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a reactiveness.
Sure.
Going beyond the reactive and having the foresight and planning and communicating and being professional, and that keeps you grounded for the client, not reactive. Mm-hmm. Number one. And then number two is one deal equals many deals, especially in your market, but in all of our markets, is focusing on the deal at hand and how to do a great job, because there may be many deals that deal is pending on. Mm-hmm. It's going to lead to referrals for more deals. Mm-hmm. Number three, you talked a lot about off-market deals, but it's also just no. I think recently I was in a room. I was fortunate enough to be in a room with Lava Stribling, and she made the comment that in New York City, they became the force they became. They didn't have the same marketing budget. They didn't have a lot of things the competition had. But one thing they did have was the insight and the market knowledge that no one else did. Mm-hmm. Having that for the client really brings it home. So mm-hmm. Don't react, plan ahead, be organized. One deal is many deals, which goes into referrals and doing a good job. And number three, know your market. Mm-hmm. Off-market deals too. I just had to reiterate that for everybody because I think there's a lot of value in that we could only leave a mess. What has been, I know I asked you before, like, what's your worst deal? And you're like, there's no bad deal. But what has been, I know you like a challenge, so if you like it, you've experienced one. What do you think has been one of your biggest challenges with your greatest lessons learned that you might share with us?
That's a good question. Biggest challenges. We're faced with challenges every day in our market, and we're faced with challenges with tricky transactions and with really unique timing. I think one of my biggest challenges recently was working with a specific, a great client. They were not only great clients, but great friends. And they had a fantastic home, and they were looking for a piece of land that was extremely hard to find, to build on. And so we had to really source, it took us about 2 years. We've been looking for this property for about 2 years. Wow. And we had to find an off-market property, which we found. And we also had to balance that with selling their current home, which was a beautiful home in a very great area of town, but had to all sort of balance that together, sort of under the radar. And that was an extremely challenging transaction, just managing all the moving parts. Mm-hmm. And it was an extremely rewarding transaction to see how excited my clients were to finally identify and secure their dream property, and then to also be able to sell what was a great home fairly quickly and for a great price. So that was a real challenge. And what I learned from that was, it's perseverance. Our transactions don't just happen overnight. They take time. And that was 2 years in the making. And so, it takes patience, and it takes working as a team with clients. And that one, we really were able to find the right property for them.
So I love what you said. It took 2 years. You took perseverance. I don't think it's uncommon that many of us can easily get impatient, even though our industry is competitive. Mm-hmm. How do you
what would you say is because there's the understanding, perseverance, just doing it, sticking to it, but there's probably a mindset to that. How do you get in that mindset? Or, I've could think of a million examples of my own where things that looked like they never happened did, but it was the mindset of how you engaged and deciding what to engage in and what not to engage in.
Sure.
An example on that transaction, that could have never happened.
Yeah.
How do you get in the mindset? How do you protect yourself? How do you make it happen? Any advice on just the engagement in something like that and the kind of deals that you're doing?
Yeah, that was the case of really knowing your market, really knowing the players and who to turn to in your market for a specific property. Again, being patient with the process and knowing that transaction is only going to happen if you find the right property. In other words, that seller is not a seller unless they find exactly what they're looking for. And so, and it was a highly, highly in demand location in a very competitive market. It wasn't easy, but we were able to the stars aligned on that one. We were able to make it happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it because I think when I ask you questions, it's like, what do you mean? I can, like, in between the lines, this is what I'm getting everybody from Zach. What do you mean? I just did it. You just do it. Like, what do you mean how? Mindset? You just do it. Like, that's it. Just do it.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think that I'm reminded of with my clients is, we're hired to do a job and we have a fiduciary to our clients and we have a responsibility. And when we take on new clients, we're taking on that challenge and we're signing up to do our very best work for that client. And with that particular client, it was going to be, I knew it would take some time,
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one more. I'm kind of asking you the same questions, but I like to get out of you. And then I am going to go into how your business is structured in general. What do you find the most challenging about being a real estate agent?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you find the most rewarding?
Sure. The most challenging thing for me personally is finding the balance. It's as you know, we work a lot, right? Our work is consuming, and our clients need us. I watched your interview with Steve and Shane, and as Stephen said, it's 24/7, and don't get into the business if you're not prepared for that. So when we have clients who pick up the phone and have a specific need, we respond to them. And so for me, my biggest daily challenge is that balance. How do you balance all of that with a family, with 2 young boys and a wife, and how do we keep that in perspective, and how do we keep that balanced while still doing great work and making sure that we're taking good care of our clients? Most rewarding to me by far is the relationships that I get to build with my clients year over year. Some of my very dearest friends have become friends, during or after transactions. And some of my very dearest friends have asked me for my help professionally. And so by far the biggest reward that I take out of my business is the relationships that I get to build over time. And I've worked with some really great people. And it's time and time again, I'm just reminded of how fortunate I am to get to work with great clients. And then also to, it's like in team sport, it's the same thing where you have an experience together. You work together as a team, and through that you build a bond, and that bond continues. And so, by far, it's the relationships that I've forged with a lot of great clients.
Well, the kinds of friends we make that we wouldn't have made otherwise in this business, mm-hmm. and the kinds of friendships we have with them, because you said it's like sometimes you've almost been through a hazing together because of just the time and what it takes to make a deal come together and getting to know one another. Back to your challenge, how do you best handle that challenge and balance? And Do you? I don't know if we ever do.
It's a constant challenge, right? And it changes depending on the time of year and the season and what's happening in our daily lives. And I can't tell you that I have the answer, but it's just you've got to remind yourself of what's of the priorities and of perspective, and also make sure that we're fulfilling our duties and going above and beyond for our clients. So the balance is the tough thing. Again, I heard Stephen say he was leaving town, heading out of town, got a call to go on a listing appointment, and turned around, and that's where he went.
Yeah. I love what you just said. The answer to balance is priorities and perspective. Mm-hmm. Your priorities and sticking to them, and then in keeping perspective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to quote you on social media on that one. That was good. Priorities and perspective. Mm-hmm. So let's go a little bit into your team.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if we haven't even talked about, because I know you're an agent, you're top agent in the Boulder and Denver markets, mm-hmm. Compass. What's the support? Is that a team? Is that more like Stephen, where you've got people by your side, in the back end on the assistant administrative?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think, on a team level, I think that compared to a lot of other teams, a lot of other markets, my team is fairly lean, but it's a great crew. So Amanda Salzman is she's a fantastic realtor, and she's been with me for about 8 years now. She works with a lot of buyers. She's an extremely talented realtor. And she's great. And Jenny Lampert has been my transaction coordinator, and she's behind the scenes, but she's also been with me for about 8 years now as well. And she's incredible at what she does. And she's detail oriented. She's her work is fantastic. I don't see her very often because she's behind the scenes quite a bit. But the three of us have worked pretty tightly together for about 8 years now.
Wow.
And then about a year ago, I brought on Hillary Harris. She's licensed. She's new to the business. And she's the type who will just roll up her sleeves, and whatever has to get done, she'll get it done. So she's licensed. She can show property if need be. Today she's meeting a stager at a property to stage it, to help them get the new listing staged. She'll meet a photographer and help them with a photo shoot. She'll meet a roofer and help that person deal with an inspection.
She's in the field, learning about the business, getting her feet wet, and she'll probably become an agent on the team when she's ready.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, no, go ahead.
So it's the four of us together, and we have worked together for a long time, and it's a great team. We've got really good energy together, and it works well.
So it's you're the lead. You bring in most of the business. You've got another agent by your side. I assume by now she's bringing in her own business.
She brings in great business.
So she brings in her own listings. She brings in her own buyers, and mm-hmm. she helps support the business that you bring in, mm-hmm. As far as showings go, or if you bring in business that might be more suitable to her. And then if she has business she needs help with, you probably work in that way.
Correct.
And then you've got someone who literally is behind a computer all the time to handle offers, contracts, listing entry, scheduling, mm-hmm. even marketing.
She does a little, not a ton of the marketing. It's mainly contract based, deadline based, inspections.
Marketing gets into a whole new personality and a whole new.
Correct.
How do you handle that? Do you use the your Compass resources on the marketing end of things, or?
We do. We lean on some of the marketing tools through Compass, mm-hmm. and I haven't done a lot of outbound marketing. So my focus on my business has been really nurturing relationships, nurturing past client relationships, the referral basis. I do a little bit of outbound marketing, but not a ton.
I think there's a huge lesson in that, because in our business, there's a lot of focus on how I'm going to market, how I'm going to prospect, how I'm going to get business. There's so much focus on getting business.
Mm-hmm.
You're focusing on your business, and that perpetuates more business, not the concern about going out and getting it. I think there's so much to be said for that, because so much of the business that we do, really, in the end, if you look at what you put in and what you get out, what you're getting out is coming from your existing clients, without a doubt. Your experience feeds your future business more than anything else you can do. Would you agree with that?
I would agree wholeheartedly. I think that as realtors, we have a lot of distractions, and we're often pitched with these new tools that are guaranteed to bring us new business. And I followed a coach when I was new to the business, a very well-known real estate coach who's still a very well-known real estate coach. And I still follow some of the things that I learned from him 17 years ago. And they're just very basic, simple things. But his premise is, with roughly 50 contacts in your phone, you can build a great business. It's not necessarily the flashiest marketing or a ton of outbound marketing. It's more of learning from past transactions, treating clients extremely well, and looking for referrals from that.
Exactly. That's just refreshing to hear, because I think also there is, I'm trying to remember who I was talking about this recently, but from the element of breaking in, especially because, pause for a minute, you're in Colorado, your price point is high, pretty much the most expensive. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think Aspen is the most expensive market in the country. Close by in Boulder.
It's expensive. It is.
It's not an expensive real estate. But the one thing, I say the best way to get somebody to run away from you is to chase them. Especially in the upper tier market, where everybody's claims they want to be and claims they've got the way to chase that client down and win them and pin them down like they're on a hunt or a chase. But they're looking for someone who can hear them, who can listen to them, and who offers value. And when you're focusing your time and resources on that, it does nothing short of cultivate itself. And then back to what Liba said in their market, breaking into that luxury market, it was no fancy tricks other than knowing the market better than anyone else. Connected to that market better than anyone else.
And you make one extremely good point, which is listening. And I find that I've never thought of myself as a good salesperson. I come across a lot of realtors who feel like they need to sell. And I find more than anything, it's critical to be an extremely good listener and to truly listen to our clients and to what they need and to what they're looking for and to what their desires are. And I think if there's any one tool that's helped me, it's being an extremely good listener.
So on that note, that comes up with me a lot. People talk about scripting. I have something to say, but I want to hear what you think of it first about scripting, and then I'm going to elaborate on your thoughts. What are your thoughts on scripting?
I must tell you that I have never used it.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Well, because you had the coach before.
Yes.
So, right, exactly. I always say, stop scripting and start listening. And maybe your scripting works on cold calls for, a certain, volume. If they're in a price point where the volume of it's so high that you can it's like a guy going in a bar. If you hit enough girls with a one-liner, maybe you'll get lucky. That's what scripting is.
Sure.
And then there's listening.
Yeah.
And the more quality of the client, the more valuable the listening is, and the more they recognize it and appreciate it. And I'm repeating myself, but behind that listening needs to be a wealth of knowledge to listen, take it in, and understand what needs to be done to get that client what they need and advise them, whether it's to do the deal or not, but to get them where they need to be.
Yeah, I think that that's the biggest thing that I rely upon is really, really good listening. And then I also find that clients, they can feel when someone's trying to sell them on something. And they can feel when someone's trying to push them or sell them or impress upon them. And I find that if you can really focus on listening and then speaking with clients on a normal basis, not on a scripted basis and not on what you think they want to hear, but actually what your best advice is for that client. I find that really goes a long way.
Do you have any, and on listening, beyond listening, do you have any advice on handling difficult conversations and, how that goes and how is there beyond listening, is there a way or a checkpoint of how you're going to make sure you communicate well? Because I think a lot of times when you're dealing with buyers and sellers, it gets very emotional and sometimes it's hard for them to get what they need from you when they're not heard. So how do you do that? Or do you have any?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what I try and do is I try and put myself in my client's shoes. And if I'm going to a listing appointment or if we're working on the sale of a property, what would I do if this was my home and how would I best prepare it and position it to have a successful sale? And I think that if we take a step back and we remind ourselves that it's not just a transaction, but it's a big deal for our clients. And if we put ourselves in our clients' shoes mentally for 5 minutes and think about what are the things that I would do if this was my home, it's a really good way to remind yourself of some perspective and to, sort of narrow down on the important pieces of selling that property.
Exactly. That's great advice. That's great advice. I love it because it's just so straightforward. It's like, just listen, just do the right thing. Just do your job. That's it. No fancy tricks. And you made a comment earlier about you just need 50 really good people on your phone or 50 really good relationships, not 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that about kind of what your business looks like? Because I'm going to ask you our kind of final 3 questions, but well, here's one question. If there's one thing, I used to ask this a lot and haven't asked it in a long time, but if there's one thing you wish you knew when you got into business that you know now, what would that be?
That's a really good question. That's a tricky question. I think what I've learned over the years is that we have a capacity to do more than we think that we can do. And I hear new agents talk about being busy, and then I think about it on a relative level. And what I've noticed is that if you can work smarter and if you can work more efficiently, and we oftentimes get caught up on doing work that is distracting and is not what our priorities are. But if you can really focus on what we're being called upon to do by our clients, I think that we can handle more than we think that we can. I think that our capacity to do work and to balance a lot of work is greater than we think it is.
I think we should rewind that, everybody, and go back 15 seconds or whatever that was and play that over and over. I just want to end the show on that, but I'm going to do the final 3 anyway.
Yeah, sure.
The number 1 is, and you kind of already answered it, but I'm going to ask again, what is the biggest tool, the most beneficial tool in your business? And that could be technology. It could be listening. It could be whatever, I used to have a networking lunch that I'm actually relaunching now. That was a huge tool for me in staying engaged with my clients as well as bringing in referrals. What would yours be?
The most of the single best tool.
What's the one thing you couldn't live without? Oh, there's a lot of them in your business, but other than your cell phone,
those
account.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Can we come back to that one? Let me give it a little bit. Listening for sure. I mean, that's the single best tool that we have.
Yeah, I mean that is. Do you use a CRM, by the way?
I do. I've started to. I admittedly, I've never used a CRM up until this year. So it's been a while.
50 people in your database. I mean, it wasn't easy. It was easy to manage.
Yeah. That's a tough habit to get into. When you don't start off with a CRM, it's hard to adjust. But I have been, and Compass has done a really good job with that, and it's been a pretty seamless transition over to that. That's a great tool for sure. What else is a good tool? DocuSign is a great tool.
That is a great tool.
that's made our lives a lot easier.
Great tool.
My
favorite of all of the tools to digitally sign. My go-to always. The other one, whatever. Books. Don't even tell me you don't read. Everyone's probably like, I don't read. How can you not read? I have a feeling you might read.
Yeah.
If there's one book we've got to read, what is it? For business? What?
Real estate based or?
One. And if you've got two, one in real estate, one in life, give us two.
Every year at the end of the year, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert. I forget what Robert's last. I can't pronounce his last name.
I think it's Kiyosaki. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's an extremely simple book. And he has one focused on real estate and on investing. But it's a really simple book that I find is just a good reminder over and over again. I read Ray Dalio's book this past, last month. I read Principles, which was a fascinating book. Not real estate based, but just a great business book in general.
What is it? Yeah, give us a little about it, or your big takeaway from it.
Again, he focuses on relationships, and he talks about being completely transparent with his team and with his coworkers and within his corporation, and how that communication and that transparency helped him grow the single largest hedge fund in the world. So it was a pretty fascinating book, and some of the anecdotes in there were really interesting. That was a great one. That was a great read.
You said some of the anecdotes in there are really interesting. You got to give us an example before we move on.
Oh, just some of the, he's somebody who has seen, and again, this is not real estate based, but this is more
even better
finance based, but just his experience in different markets, through different economies, through different presidencies, just really seeing his experience with how markets behaved based on geopolitical, based on all kinds of different factors, and how he thought that he knew what would happen and he was proven wrong, and then how he learned from that next time around. It's a very interesting, the history of what he has done is fascinating, and the way that he learned from mistakes is really cool.
Well, that's finance, but that just applies to life. We always think things are going to happen a certain way, and then they don't.
Yeah.
It's kind of, now I'm going to go out there for a minute. Breaking Bad. I mean, like, best show ever. The beginning of the show, you're like, how did he get there?
Mm-hmm.
Life.
Mm-hmm.
Got to see in advance, and then it made the present that much more compelling.
And there's a couple realtors in town who I really look up to and really admire, and they've been in the business much longer than me. And I'll reach out to them and just kind of pick their brains and what did you see last time around when this happened in this kind of market, and what do you what are you expecting based on X, Y, and Z here, and just really knowing that somebody else has been doing it longer and better than me, and learning as much as I can from what they've seen throughout their careers has been really helpful. And the same is true. I've got a couple really extremely talented coworkers. And same thing with them. I ask them questions all the time about what works for them. What are they doing differently? What do they recall last time around when this happened in our market? And just trying to really, learn more and better understand what to expect.
Exactly. I mean, you say it like you're a new agent. You have been in business for 17 years, but you're probably in a market where people either last or they don't, more so than most markets are that way anyway. Our industry is that way, but especially in your market because it's so competitive.
It's true. Yeah, it is. It's really true. it's a, as you know, it's a tough business. I find that new agents, if they can make it through that first 5-year-ish cycle, then those clients probably look to buy something else. And if you've done good work for those clients, they're going to come back and ask you again. And if you can get to that, that 10-year, that second cycle of clients, it just sort of grows and builds from there.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Last question.
Sure.
If there's one thing that if we were going to forget everything else in this interview and just remember one thing, what should that be?
About real estate or about
anything in this interview or in business in general?
Yeah.
Or about real estate in general?
Yeah.
What's the one message you hope we take from this? Maybe that's the way to ask it.
Sure. So I work in an extremely small town in a city of 100,000 people in a very small area and in a very small real estate market. Mm-hmm. And I find that, it sounds a little cliche, but it's the golden rule. And we've got to treat each other well in our business. And we've got to remember that, we want to treat clients, not only clients, but our fellow realtors, as best as we possibly can, just the way that you and I want to be treated. And that comes up in multiple offers, and that comes up in, off-market transactions. And we've got to remind ourselves that we've got to be good to each other. And the relationships are critical. And, some of my closest friends are in the business. They're realtors. And so those relationships are important. And, we've got to make sure that we're treating everyone fairly and kindly and following our guidelines.
Well, being in the business, I almost want to stop at that, but I think I'd love to ask you this too. I think we've been in the business for you've been in a little bit longer than me. Mm-hmm. Say you have, because it makes me feel better. 17 years is like so long. But being in the business as long as we have, what do you say about the compound effect of, in the beginning, you're just kind of doing it because you're supposed to, or just being a nice person because you're just supposed to be a nice person and because that's what feels right. Mm-hmm. As time goes on, do you feel the compound effect of what that's done for you or other agents and the positive and the negative?
Absolutely. I feel it and I see it every day. Mm-hmm. I see it in a very positive manner. In my business, I feel it and I see it and I notice it. And when you get a referral from a great client who was extremely pleased with your service, you feel it. And when you get a note from a fellow realtor after a closing, thank you for a professional transaction, you feel that. And so I find that I don't think it goes unnoticed. I think that people take very close notice of our work and what we do on a daily basis. And, we have to remind ourselves we're going in and out of people's homes every day. And that's a big deal, right? We can get caught up in just focused on the transaction, or we have to remind ourselves that we're actually stepping foot into somebody else's home. And that's, we've got to be respectful of that and thank them for letting us see their home and letting us show their home. And, it's a good reminder just to keep that in mind.
What a great message. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.